Hi, my name is Paulus Andersen and I'm a Lithuanian-Danish concert pianist. Today I'm going to talk about Chopin Etude Op.10 No.1. I'm going to share some tips and exercises on how to practice this etude. It's one of the most challenging etudes to play, and especially when you have to play in a competition or on the stage. So when I started playing this etude, there was no YouTube videos available to check how to practice this etude, how to work on it, how to simplify many things. But I was lucky enough to have really good teachers throughout my life, and they gave me some valuable tips on how to practice this etude. So I'm gonna explain everything step by step on how you should practice this etude. So to begin with, the first thing is it's very important at the very beginning, once you open the score, to practice legato, piano, and with very singing tone. And you have to do it for actually quite a long time. So not one day, not 1 hour, actually like maybe a week or so. So you start by playing very slowly and be cautious about each note. Just full focus on each note and make sure that you have very good sound quality. And this also at the same time, when you play this etude, it's very important to use finger pads. Many people they play and it's a bit too close to their nails, which is not good because it gives them much less control over the quality of the sound. So just keep this in mind. It's very important to use pads, finger pads, when you play this etude, for me personally. And so the first step is to play very slowly and very singing sounds, very expressive sounds, and be very mindful about the quality of each note and harmony. So let's start. I'm just gonna play maybe first measure, first bar, and then you will understand how it should be going. Once you master this technique, and once you get used to it and you start feeling comfortable with it, then there are two steps that you can do afterwards. So these steps, I had the luck to work with Alexander Ivanov, who was a student of Vladimir Krainov, and he gave me some tips, and these two exercises you can also use for any other piece, and it's just universal exercise that you can use for everything. So basically, the thing is, when you play piano, the most important muscles are actually palm muscles. So if you lift your fingers super high, it's not going to give you any results, because these muscles are responsible for the quality of your sounds and for the quality of your performance. So what do? You take and you grab the keyboard, so you practice. So this is, I'm going to show you a combination of two exercises. So what you can do, so you grab the key, grab, and you do not lift your finger from the key. You just keep your fingers on the keys. And so on. And what you have to do, you have to achieve medium middle tempo and feel comfortable with it, and make sure that each note is very well articulated but no harsh sound. So it has to be a really good quality sound without any pushing or banging the keyboard. And the second exercise is quite similar, but it's gonna be, you will have to play complete legato, but use the same muscles but much slower. And it's like, you can imagine that you have a dough of pizza or whatever, and you just try to squeeze it. So this is basically what you do. So you use the muscles, you use these muscles of your palm muscles, and then you just take each note, like the most important note ever. Let's take the most difficult passage here. For me personally was this one. And what I do, I take each key. So you have to practice this quite a lot also, maybe give it a couple of days just to get used to it and to train your muscles. And this combination of these two exercises it teaches your hand how to play. so your fingers will know where to play, and how to make a good quality, because sometimes, you know, people play and they do this. So this exercise will prevent you from bad articulation and also harsh pushing sound. So once you finish these exercises, then I would say step 3, or whatever you want to call it, third step would be to understand how you should play it. And for me, it worked really well to prepare my hand each time before each transition. So I already placed my fingers on the keys that are gonna play. So then I place these fingers here already, so they're ready. So I don't have to jump or whatever. So they're here. You can also do this, which is basically Alfred exercise, which is also very useful, and I'm going to talk about them later in the video, because I use a lot of these exercises as well. So this is very important for preparing your hand when you play, because sometimes the transition is really important and many people forget about it. They just practice and they don't know the reason why they play wrong notes or why it's tense. Then for me personally, what really worked also, it's those rhythmical exercises, but they have to be done correctly, because many people, when they do rhythmical exercises, they use bad sound quality, they do not listen, or they do it completely wrong. So to make sure, first thing, always, no matter what you do, always pay attention to the quality of your sound. So it has to be really good quality sound, no harsh, no pushing, and also always your hands must be relaxed, no tension. So I did this 4 notes slow, 4 notes fast, and then vice versa. So let's say I'm gonna take different section. Then I'm gonna do the same thing, but the other way around. And so on. So you do this. Then you do the same thing, but you only do with 8 notes. So let's say, let's take other passage. I don't know. Let's say this one. The A major is also complicated. And so on. And this is, and then you can do bar by bar. So first 4 notes slow, 4 fast. Then you do this for, I don't know, 2-3 times. And you feel comfortable with it, and you play without hitting the wrong notes. Then you do 8 notes, and then you do the whole bar, and then, like, let's say 1 bar slow, 1 bar fast. So I don't know, like. But also, do not start right away with the maximum tempo. Even in those fast sections, I use middle tempo, which is like, I don't know, like 100, maybe 110, no more. And then once you feel completely comfortable with it, then you can increase your tempo, because this is the problem with many people, because we do not have the patience, and they start practicing and playing this etude very fast. So you should avoid this at all costs, because it's going to cost you a lot of time afterwards to actually correct all those mistakes. So once you do these exercises, I used a lot of Alfred Cortot exercises, and at the same time I did my own version of them. So which is, so you do this, which is really good. Then also you do all the chords. Or you do this. Then you can do this. You divide by 2. So 2, 2. And let's say in some sections you have the same harmony going up and down, and sometimes it changes. So some people will ask questions like, oh, this is going to be complicated because it changes the pattern, so don't worry about it. So let's say take this one. Let's say this, and then it changes the middle note, so just repeat. Or you can hold the top note. So you do this. Then there's one more. You can use one note, the very first note you play normally, then the middle notes you hit together. So and so on, and you do this for as many times as you want to make sure when you feel the positions, because this gives you a feeling of position of each possible position. So this is really important because many people lose track of their position, and especially when we have transitions. So this is, you should really practice this quite a lot. Then the next step is to divide into small chunks and sometimes do all kinds of variations. So I prefer doing this. So I do by 3. So, and you practice this, I don't know, you play this maybe 3-4 times once you get comfortable with it. Then I also do a little bit of brain exercise, which is might be confusing. So I do like a broken chord, like a broken arpeggio. So I skip one note, then I go back. So then I do the same with chords. Let's take the other passage. I don't know. Practice this way, and of course sometimes once you finish practice, do not try to play in full tempo or try out, because your brain needs time to adjust. So if you try playing afterwards and it doesn't work and you play more wrong tones, so don't worry about it, because this is not the end. So you need to finish all these steps to be able to play this etude without any mistakes, or at least with much less mistakes than you did before. So you finish this one, then the other step would be, I call it a list method. This was taught by my teacher Philippe, and this is divided into 7 steps. So the first one is you have to play super slow, and let's take the most complicated section. So for me personally, it was A major section. So let's say take this one. So you play super slow with full focus. Okay, so this is the first step you do. Then you have to divide it into rhythmical groups. So, and each group you have to repeat twice or 3 times if you want. So let's say, or you can repeat as many times as you want till you feel completely comfortable. Let's say you don't feel confident to have this transition from here, so you practice multiple times. This. Then the first step is muscular group. So you get the position. So and you play this once or twice. So you get the feeling of muscular groups. Then it's called backwards. So you take the last measure, last quarter notes, but of course this is in 16th notes, so you do this. Then you do this. And then so on, and you return back to here. So basically. Then the 5th step is to play the chords, and then you can do all kinds of variations of chords exercises or your own. So I leave this up to you for your creativity. I personally do that. And all kinds of possible variations. Then the other one, the step number 6, is you play each key twice. So then the last step, what you have to do, it's actually transition. So you have to work in transition. So this is a bit complicated sometimes because you have to repeat the small transitions each time, 3 times each, and then you start from the beginning, the passage, and then you repeat this 2 times. So let's say the transition is from A to A, and you just play this 3 times. Then you play it from here 3 times. Then you do this 2 times. Or 3 times, as I just did. And then you keep on going till you finish the complete passage. So those exercises helped me a lot. And then one of the last steps, which is going to be also divided into like 4 or 5 smaller steps. So those are exercises that I learned from my mentor, Australian pianist Jeffrey Douglas Match, and he studied a lot the Busoni technique, and he showed me some tips on how to practice and how to use this also method to improve my technique and how to practice difficult sections. So the first one is you have this is many people, they completely ignore the part where you have to relax your finger after hitting the key. So the main idea of this exercise is to use as little as possible effort to achieve the maximum result without having tension in your arms, etc. So to begin with, you just start playing staccato, leggero staccato, but also do not lift your fingers from the keys. You have to get a feeling that the key lifts your finger up. So you have to relax your finger right away after playing the key. So let's take different section. Let's say, so you basically play staccato, leggero, pianissimo, and make sure that each key and it has even sound, no accents, nothing, completely perfect even sound. So you have to be really careful and listen to it and be super attentive when you do this. Yeah, I just did A, which was a bit louder. This is not okay, so you have to avoid this. So you do this many times. You practice this, I don't know, 10, 20 times. I did this experiment. I practiced this way for all transcendental etudes of Liszt for 3 weeks, and it changed a lot. So it changed my playing a lot. So I do recommend doing this for quite a lot. Then also the second exercise which you could use here, and they do not interfere with each other. It's also part of Busoni technique. So you play pianissimo, legato, and just feel each key, and also with perfectly even sound. So let's take the same section. And you do not use any weight of your arm, only the weight of your fingers. And this is just a general tip. Try to imagine when the fingers are the extension of a keyboard. So they're part of a keyboard. So this is just the extension, nothing, not like a separate part of the instrument. So this is just the part of the keyboard. So let's start. And when you play, try grabbing a little bit the key, each key, like almost like petting something, like gently. So you practice this also for quite a lot. So because you need to get the feeling of it. Once you feel comfortable, then you can add the weight of your arm. Then you add your weight of your shoulders, and then you increase the weight. So this is basically just gives you a sense of how to distribute the weight and control the sound. And also, when you play pianissimo, you should be able to play this etude completely pianissimo. If you can do this, play Etude without any pedal, without anything, and only pianissimo, leggero, then you will definitely know that you have that it's gonna give you a lot of accuracy, and your chances of playing it with less wrong notes increases. So you practice this way also quite a lot. Then there's also a few more methods that Rachmaninoff used in his practice. So he used to practice each measure twice or three times. So I combine these two methods. So I use Busoni pianissimo leggero method combined with each measure practiced by Rachmaninoff. So let's take another passage. Let's say this one. I stop on this note and I play twice. Then I continue from this note. So this is the first note of each measure. So that's pretty easy. 4 notes. And then you do this for the rest of the etude. So this is then you do the same thing but only half bar. So each eight measures, or 8 notes, 8/16 notes, or 2 measures. So let's say I'm gonna take the other one more. So then continue from here. It's basically methods which I call divide and conquer. So sometimes you see a big, huge passage or section and you think, oh my god, this is going to be complicated, impossible to play. But if you divide it into small chunks and you practice each one to make it each chunk perfect, and then you practice your transitions, it's going to help you a lot and a lot. And now also, what I also use in my practice, it's a lots of metronome, and it's not just like the typical student metronome playing where you play boring. Let's say you need to practice most of the time in 90% of your tempo, because many people practice either super slow or in a full tempo. But in 90% of your tempo, this is the least comfortable tempo. Usually this is the tempo which kind of feels very fast, almost like your real tempo, but at the same time it's kind of slow and it's not comfortable, and it gives you weird feeling. But if you practice so much in this tempo, it will give you so much more accuracy and stability. So I use, let's say, I think the composer wrote like tempo 176. So let's say 176. So let's say we should practice in tempo 154, 55, around 90%. And let's say if you play in different tempo, if you play in 40, if you play in 160, then you have to practice in tempo 140. And do not use pedal, do not use una corda, just sit there and play. So let's say my tempo is, this is my tempo, so I take it a bit slower tempo, almost the same tempo, just slightly under tempo, and I practice many times with metronome till I feel completely comfortable. And the goal is to play also musically well with metronome, because many people just play very square and no phrasing, nothing. So you have to make sure that when you practice with a metronome, it's with phrasing, with sound quality and everything, and do not use pedal. So this also will help you. And sometimes if you have a temptation to use pedal, just put your foot under the pedal. This worked for me many times. So you practice this many times. And first, if you have a really good metronome app on your phone, you can change the tempos, you can use different notes. So I suggest you starting with the smallest notes. So set the metronome on 16th notes and try playing everything completely evenly, and do not avoid hitting wrong notes, obviously. Once you feel comfortable with that, then you put on 8 notes, and then you put on quarter notes, and then you use half bar metronome. So this gonna help you, give you lots of stability. And also, even though it's Chopin and it's nothing like Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven stylistically. You still need to have some sort of pulse, because pulse and rhythmical stability gives you more freedom within those measures. So also I personally like to divide into small sections. Of course, I do not try to do it when I perform, but I just keep this in the back of my head, so it helps me to divide these sections. So I do not play with these accents, so basically so I do this. It's just slight small accents that only you can sense, but you never actually do these accents when you play, and nobody else notices that. But this is also very helpful. And then one of the last exercises that I also use a lot when practicing this etude is actually, I forget completely about my fingers, and I only try to use my arm to distribute the weight and to control the position of my fingers. So basically imagine that your fingers are completely busted and you cannot move your fingers at all, and you just use your arm to help your fingers. So you just play it 2 times, 3 times, and also it gives you lots of ideas if you have tension or not, because many people have stiff forearms and stiff shoulders. So this is also going to help you to relax your arms. So this is going to help you a lot to control the positions and feel your arm. And of course, obviously, once you finish this exercise, of course, you're going to use your fingers, your wrist, but your hand and your arm should also help you, because many people are very stiff here and they think that they only will use fingers and it's going to help, which is just part of the solution, and it's not going to give you 100% results. So if you do this, it's definitely going to help you. And also, some people are having issues finishing the last 4 free notes of each passage, especially the bottom. And this is especially a big problem for bigger guys than me who has like wide and broad shoulders. So I found a simple solution is actually to sit a little bit more on the left side. So if you sit right in the middle, and if you're like a girl or if you're a smaller guy, no problem with that. But if you have large frame, large shoulders like I do, sit more on the left side, so you do not have, your arm does not touch your body, so it gives you more freedom. And here it's no problem to go up here, so this helps me a lot. And so on. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it's going to be helpful for you, and keep practicing and good luck.